Hi everyone. Today we did get a bigger continuation here, but you can see this is a breakdown retest of this structure. Last time we tagged this level, that was a big turning point and we are here once again. But let's take a quick look at all of the charts as we head into tomorrow's session. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got Nvidia having to address this risk around their AI chips. Everyone is very concerned that Google is going to start challenging them on chip design, and Nvidia fell 3% when everything else was going higher. But they said here they're at least a generation ahead of the entire industry and they have 90% of the market. But the problem is they're priced in for 90% of the market. There's not a lot of market share for them to take, but if Google's in-house chips start to get a little bit more attention and they start to chip away at this 90%, they only need a little bit to become significantly more valuable. This is also a part of their business where they're not really getting valuation for that part of their business. And they say here, we're delighted in Google's success. I don't know how true that is, but they will continue to supply Google as they have done in the past. And they say Nvidia is, of course, at least a generation ahead of the entire industry, but markets don't seem to believe that, at least for now. Moving over to the Fear and Greed Index, up to a 16 from an 11. We did get to a pretty low level here. We ended up bottoming out at a 7, which is pretty low. It's not as low as we've seen. We got a 4 here, a 3, but it's pretty low. Usually you start to see at least somewhat of a bounce. How long lasting is that bounce going to be? That is the bigger question. And I don't think we really have an answer to that quite yet. Momentum bouncing pretty sharply, fear still there on the metric, however. Every single metric except volatility now in fear or extreme fear. Volatility is pulled back to that SMA. This is a zone where it should bounce if it's going to do it. Safe haven demand still negative, bounced up just a little bit, and then junk bond demand still extreme fear. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see the data here was okay. PPI core numbers came in lower than expected. That was good. Retail sales in line with expectations. Headline retail sales not as good there. Atlanta Fed GDP still a high number at 4%, so that's very, very good if we can continue to stay in that range. Consumer confidence was pretty bad, well below estimates and much lower than the previous numbers. That continues to step down as we head into the most important time of the year in terms of consumers. And then looking at tomorrow, we get core and headline durable goods orders as well as GDP in the morning, which is definitely going to be interesting. You can see that previous number here was a 3.8. Can we stay in that range for Q3? And then core and headline PCE prices, PCE price index. Would expect those to be generally in line with PPI, and that'll pretty much round it out for the week. Remember, Thanksgiving is closed and then a half day for Friday. Moving over to the charts here, looking at the S&Ps, like I said, we're right in that zone of resistance here. On the daily chart, we're pretty well above it, but on that hourly chart, we are right at it here. Got above the 21, continues to rally here after hours, looking at 680 as that next zone of resistance. If it gets above there, then we are absolutely looking for quite a bit of upside to potentially in here around 685, and then maybe that next trend line around 693. Of course, that would take you to new all-time highs. Is this just a hesitation? I still believe this is a little bit more than a hesitation. I think this is just pulling in some buyers here before we end up getting a little bit worse price action. But for now, everything does look a little bit bullish. If you kind of move this structure here, something like that is interesting to me. I don't think we are quite there yet. Kind of correlates with where we are though. Momentum still very much bullish. RSI still very much bullish. You can see still lower highs on this structure, pretty lower lows. Zone of support is still 653.17, and we continue to go higher, right? Nearly 1% higher, pretty much straight up all session. You can see did pull back just a little bit, but 21 EMA held, and 9 EMA held. Pushed through the 200 on the hourly. Everything looks good. We're definitely extended in the short term, however, but it still looks bullish. Moving over to that 4-hour chart, you can see we did push through that trailing stop, which puts us back into bullish conditions on the 4-hour. That was 672.54, and we pushed through that zone to that upper ATR band, which does give you bullish conditions. Like I said, 678.20 is that level. And that's pretty much where we're at right now, 675.75, just short of that 678 area in here, and we are right at it. Is this going to be another zone of resistance? I certainly think that is a big possibility. Not a ton of volume over the last couple days, which usually is not a good sign. That usually means there's potentially just kind of coasting on the volume that's there, and that is usually going to be a failing price, especially when you had such huge volume here on the sell. Came into the zone. Do we reject here? That is the question, of course. And then looking at that daily chart, we are still obviously in bearish conditions. We got through the midpoint there. So your next target would be that first ATR band, which would be 683.61 right here, which would take you right to this previous high. Not quite the all-time high, but the one just below it here. Either way though, still looks like short-term bullish. Moving over to the NASDAQ. NASDAQ doesn't look nearly as strong. This is right in here with this right shoulder, that 611.75 area. Thought we were going to hit this 200 here. Thought we were going to hit that trend line and reject a little bit early. We tagged it here and sold off, but it looks like we're going to come right through to that 611 area tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens at that zone there. Momentum still bullish, RSI still bullish. Again, still very little volume, but slightly bullish into this area. VWAP also there at 612.20, just above my level at 611.75. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see we're not quite to that midpoint. The NASDAQ is lagging on a relative basis. The SPY charts are in a little bit better position there. You can see that midpoint right now is 613.93. Didn't quite make it there. Your trailing stop all the way up here at 636. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near there. That is pretty much in line with that previous high. It just does not seem like we can make it that high on this push. Certainly not this week, but we did barely get into bullish conditions on that 2 o'clock candle, closed above that level. This is kind of where I was assuming that we were going to reject, and we ended up pushing even higher. Tagged that area on the 10 o'clock candle, 2 o'clock candle. We ended up pushing through it. You can see slightly bullish here in the after hours at 609.49. Looking for that upper band in the short term. That's going to be 612.27. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell just continues to be massive. I should have gone long on the Russell when I planned to, which was on the Monday open, which would have been a really, really good trade, and I just didn't do it, and I didn't really trade it at all here today. I traded it a little bit yesterday, and that was good, but would have been another great trade. We're above that level now, 244.46, so that's your kind of trailing stop in the short term. Continues to look really powerfully bullish. I still believe this is going to be a higher lower high or a double top in here, and then this will be a broader topping pattern, right, where you have a high double top in here. So we kind of get into this trend line structure area like we did here, and then you eventually fail into kind of February, March timeframe. Next year would kind of be where to look for that, but for now, continues to be really strong. The only concern here for me is just how strong this is. Usually the bear market rallies are more aggressive than they are in the bullish side, right? So if this is a bear market rally, super aggressive rally, ultimately that means this will go lower, and you do have to be ready for that, right? So keep that in mind. Dow also coming in to retest this trend structure in here around 473. That is the area that we're watching, and we're very close to that. Moving over to the Mag 7. Mag 7 tagged the 21 EMA and rejected from that area. That's here around 364.50 or so. VWAP also there, 365.30, just behind it. Hit that zone and paused. It's hanging in there after hours. It was up about 1.1%. Good volume though, a little bit better volume on the Mag 7. I think this is pretty much 100% driven by Google at this point. Nvidia is falling. I think Apple was doing okay today, but we'll take a look at them here in a second. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Like I said, Apple did okay, got above that level and closed, so that's good. It's new record high close, new record high wicks there. After hours continuing to go up. Looks like Apple is probably a good trade here for tomorrow. And then Microsoft came into that zone of support for 66.57, and that 200 SMA finally threw a wick to that zone and then bounced really aggressively from that area, and it is bouncing there. You can see it did a little bit of volume coming in, momentum stepping to bullish here. Look for a pretty decent counter trend on that move, and then we'll see what happens after that. Moving over to Tesla and Nvidia, you got Tesla up 0.39, momentum bullish, RSI bullish, back above that 414.50 level. We closed above it yesterday, threw a wick to the level again, all the way down to 406.90, and then bounced again. So continues to look good. Still have a zone of resistance in this trend structure here around 427, and then that 55 EMA there as well at 429.50 or so. Above that is 450.22. And then looking at Nvidia, you can see that continued to fall here, 2.5%, went much lower on the session, tagging this area here around that 144 EMA, around 167.89. Low of day was 169.55. We expected this to continue to fall, so it is a little bit of a technical price action, but of course they have that catalyst of a little bit of competition around the chip space. They're still getting all the money, but if they start to lose a little bit of that, that is obviously going to be very bad for them. Moving over to Meta and Google. Meta did pretty well, 3.78% after falling quite a lot. This has been a pretty terrible chart, but it's finally finding some legs here up to that 21 EMA, up to VWAP, back above that 630.99 level. We closed above 602, pushed to 630. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, very little volume. Don't love that, right? Got some volume here on the sell, continue to sell. Not a ton of volume on this rally, so okay. And then looking at Google here, you can see 1.62%. Tried to go higher, ended up falling just a smidgen after the open, but continues to look crazy. Just absolutely parabolic, right? There's nothing you can say here. Just continues to go higher. We were watching it in here, and then we gapped up, had a bull flag, massive continuation, just continues to go straight to the moon, and there's really nothing to work with. Just looks super aggressive and super bullish. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, both of these finding a little bit of legs, 1.38% and 2.14% respectively. Momentum bullish here, RSI bullish, continuing to look at staples as a bullish trade. Think this is going to continue to go here. It's had a decent fall, found some support at a key level. Think this is going to go. And then looking at discretionaries, pretty good candle there. Again, basically no volume, right? This is a holiday week, so you can kind of push markets around with less volume. Do keep that in mind. That's a potential play, but right at the 21 EMA, right at VWAP, maybe we come in here, find a little bit more to that 235.85 area. 55 is there as resistance as well. 236.28 trend resistance in there as well. Lots of reasons to be a little bit hesitant in this area, but once we can get through there, this would be super bullish. Otherwise, if we retag this area and reject, then you should be looking for much lower lows, at least a double bottom, if not a lower low. Moving over to 20 and 50-day breadth. This is kind of the impulsive move that you would want to see from breadth. Got close to that 68.14 level. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, looking at 52.81 on 50-day breadth. Nice push. Structurally not broken yet, but do like this kind of a push. If we can get through here and break this structure, that is definitely bullish. Moving over to the dollar here, you can see the dollar did fall a little bit on the session, a little more than I wanted to. So we were in this trend area. 21 EMA is still support there at 99.68. Support level 99.83 as a zone of support as well. Need this area to hold if we are going to go bullish, but momentum step to bearish there. If this zone breaks, think we could fall probably back down to this 99 area. Moving over to bonds, JNK had a really nice day, up over a third. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. Something's coming through here, and this is a nice risk on play. I would expect this to continue based off of this kind of a move. Got above this high here. That's definitely risk on. Maybe there's a little bit more legs really across markets. Even TLT was up quarter, headed towards that zone here, this previous high there around 90.72. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. And then moving over to the VIX zone of support in here around 1850. Next zone right below it there around 1750, just at that 144 EMA, 55 EMA zone in here. If we bounce off that area, it's going to come up quick, probably tomorrow. So a lot of critical things tomorrow. If we get that data and it's rough or anything like that tomorrow, we reject off of some of those trend structures, that is going to be terrible. Going to be a pretty critical day in markets, in my opinion. Moving over to my accounts, I got squeezed a couple of times. I tried to trade a little bit of short calls in some of those zones of resistance, and then we continued to drive through them. Traded some bullish short puts for a minute. Those were profitable. And then I tried to trade it again, and that didn't work again. So not a great day of trading for me. I was looking at those zones of resistance, and I did trade my stops okay. I definitely should have been a little bit quicker on them, but either way, not great. And then dollar position still down just a little bit, but I think the dollar could recover from here. I think tomorrow is going to be pretty critical. Let me know down in the comment section what you think about Nvidia. Is Google hot on their tail? Is Google going to take over the market? Is that going to be massive for Google? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.